So good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to this webinar as a part of the series of webinars that ASSOCHAM has started on timely and meaningful topics. I request in the start to Dr. Lovneesh Chanana ji, Chairman of the ASSOCHAM National Council on IT, ITes and eCommerce to kindly present his welcome address. Over to you, Dr. Chanana.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Varun. Mr. Abhishek Singh, CEO of MyGov, Mr. Krishnan Chatterjee, my colleague, Vidur from EY, and everybody who's on this webinar. It's indeed my pleasure to welcome you on this webinar on navigating the new normal. So when in the council, we were discussing about this particular area that's navigating the new normal. We were discussing as to what would be beneficial for the larger audience, and then we thought about that we need to generate the awareness about creating, more about understanding the paradigm shift which is leading to the new normal. So we need to create why are we the assessment and the appreciation for why are we talking about the new normal. We also need to understand what exactly is changing when we are talking about the new normal. So we need to paint a picture. We need to create the canvas as to how the new normal will look like or is going to stay with us going forward. And most importantly, we also need to probably deliberate how do we as individuals, as organizations, as companies, as enterprises actually try to address the challenges and requirements that are posed by this new normal. So in short, what we were thinking is to answer the why, what, and how of the new normal. And by now, we have gone through so much of deliberations and so much of discussions that the why part is clear. We are very, very clear that there is a complete new orientation about all aspects of services, supply chain, manufacturing, logistic, retail, which have been brought about by the recent experience of COVID-19 that we have gone into this. There is a strong need we see being advocated by management professionals to rethink the operations and business models. So much so that we are even talking about a redistribution of global wealth as a result of the experience that all of us are going through. Now, when and some of the initiatives that we saw actually have led to significant changes. The Arogya Setu app that we saw became the fastest downloaded app in no time. So this is something that we learned. Talking about companies, we saw three broad areas that came into the limelight for emergence of new thought processes. So first area was finance, wherein the dwindling cash flows, the uncertainty around demand actually brought attention, brought itself to the limelight in terms of new models. Second area was the whole supply chain disruption, and from that perspective, the thought process changed to some extent to regionalization of supply chain to become locally self-sufficient and de-risk some of the supply chain elements. That was the second. Most importantly, the third element was the employee engagement. That's the remote working, that's the employee health, that's the remote team management, and these three areas actually led to the new thought process. Now that and second thing that this new normal brought onto the surface is the one clear indication that digital consumers and digital is the way forward. Now, digital consumers today, if you see the acceleration of process of the digital consumers, that has become a reality. And if I talk about technology standpoint and the solution offerings that we see, there is a gradual shift that we are already observing. There is a shift that we are already observing. We have been so used to the thought process of value creation through offering products and services. We have been so used to the thought. We are already seeing a shift in that from value creation from products and services to value creation through experiences, through consumer experiences. We are actually observing this big shift already happening. We were considered to be an evolving digital society. We are slowly moving to a maturing digital society. That's the second shift that we are. We were talking about innovative business models to come out with competitive differentiators. We are now talking about innovative forms of new organizations. That's the shift that is happening. We were so involved, engaged with ensuring collaborative teamwork. Today we see machines as co-workers becoming a reality. Today we see the digital tools being used for that. We were answering the what and how in terms of optimization effort that we were doing. Today we are answering the why. Why should we do this, and why in the world should I do this? From mere focus on digital optimization, we have moved on to creating what we call it as intelligent enterprises. That is, we are focusing now on high value tasks which will be more beneficial for the enterprise, which will be more beneficial both from a profit and social perspective, and lead to a larger impact than what we have been thinking upon. Now, the most important part that I wanted to highlight at the beginning of this discussion is that this evolution that we are now going through is no longer a one solution that we offer products and services and consumers use it. It is a two-sided, it's a two-way evolution. That is, we use from the time that we were used to processes using data, we are now coming to the data defining the processes. That's the difference that we are gradually shifting to. Now comes the last point that I wanted is how in the initial context setting, how should we address some of the requirements of the new normal? Now, if you look at the larger point of creating an overall ecosystem and overall environment for survival, sustenance, growth of the industry, the government has done their bit. If we see now, there is a the Prime Minister has announced the plans based on 5 pillars. That's economic recovery, infra, technology, demography and demand. Now if you see the so-called 20 lakh crore package that all of us are aware of, it's focused on 5 areas. The MSME, which is the backbone now going forward. And if we have to actually look at 5 trillion economy, we have to get a 50% contribution from SMEs. So SMEs is a big focus. The migrant workers, small farmers and street vendors is the second area. Agriculture, fisheries and food processing is the third area. Now, most important to us is the reforms in core sectors like coal, like minerals, defense production, civil aviation. Now that is likely to push more urge for efficiency, and finally on ease of doing business, employment. So there is a whole new package which is around 10% of GDP, and if I want to compare, it's roughly 8 to 15% in US and 13% in 10% in Australia, and around 10.7% in Germany. Now, this is from an organizational standpoint, in my own view, as the initial thought triggering process that I want to highlight. The journey going forward will be focused on 4 or 5 things. One, it will be on data-driven decision making. That's something that is bound to happen going forward. There will be a huge focus that we will be needing on workforce skilling and workforce. Given the remote working, given the employee management, we will need to focus. The innovation would become a key recipe for success as a key differentiator. We would need to work against the regionalization effort towards creating global market access, and that's where we will need to create some of the platforms that we will be, and very soon we will see the whole regulatory and compliance ecosystem changing to ensure this is getting facilitated. And this is, to me, this is just the beginning. So that's what I wanted to do just to set the context, and we have very eminent panelists in Mr. Abhishek Singh, Krishnan, and Vidur, who will be taking each one of us through the different aspects of the new normal and how we take it forward. I do appreciate that some of us still find it difficult to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but optimism is the way forward, and I'm sure the deliberations will of the distinguished speakers on the panel will surely add value to our thought process, and we'll be able to take it forward. Thank you very much once again for being a participant and a panelist here on behalf of ASSOCHAM. This is our true privilege to have all of you for this webinar. With this, I hand it over to you, Varun. Back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Chanana. Can I request Shri Krishnan Chatterjee, Chief Customer Officer and Head of Marketing, Indian Subcontinent SAP, to please present his views.
Thank you. So I'll keep it short. Obviously, this is a large topic, but we do need to, as Dr. Chanana told us, we do need to figure it out and understand that the light at the end of the tunnel is not the headlight of the onrushing train, which it is not. So three things I think are interesting from my perspective, and as SAP, we do have 10,000 customers in India. We have been speaking to many of them, and we are getting a grasp of what's going on right now. So the first thing is, this crisis is actually very different from anything we have seen in the past. So it is not comparable, let's say, to the global financial crisis, which is a common refrain that is used. And the reason is, it's the first time we are seeing a crisis which equally impacts lives and livelihood. The consequence of this crisis is fundamental human behavior is beginning to change. And actually that itself has the biggest implication to how to define the new normal. And as a consequence of that one insight, and to put it in parallel, something similar possibly happened back in the late 90s with Y2K. And Y2K changed a lot of developed economies' behavior in terms of acceptability of offshoring and outsourcing. And that obviously generated this massive Indian IT industry that we are all familiar with today. It was the consequence of a behavior change. Similarly, we are now met with the next burning platform, which the COVID has brought to us. So of the three things which I think are massive shifts we have to think about, the first is, let me start with business leaders. Business leaders in India historically have not seen technology as a solution to business problems. Typically, in most Indian businessmen, it's easier to find solutions operationally, hire more people, put a few more trucks, put a warehouse, things like that, rather than in the digital native parlance, say that I have a supply chain issue. The answer can completely be solved by technology. A very interesting parallel I've always thought about was the fact that Uber, to set up a business model which pre-COVID had 500,000 people earning livelihood from it, started with 2 people traveling into this country. 2 people set up that business model. So I think the first change we are going to see, and today many conversations we are hearing are from very traditional businesses saying, how do we bring automation to manufacturing shop floors and such like. So that is one thing which has begun. And why that's a good thing is, I think the government in India has already spent a lot of time and policy in setting up a digital infrastructure, the India stack and such like, Aadhaar payments and many others, GST, which today enables businesses to actually leverage technology in new ways. But a lot of that hasn't happened. And now that mindset is shifting. The second important thing to, I think, point out is this current crisis is pointing towards very fundamental shifts in the entirety of the business model, not just in one part. So just as an example, if you look at a business model in terms of front office, mid office, back office, in the front office today, companies who sold, let's say, things like two-wheelers or automobiles, they have to answer a question about how do I sell these products without necessarily having the consumer step into a dealership. It's a huge question. Nobody's ever addressed that properly. But those are the questions, the business model. And remember, to answer that question, it's not just changing your sales and marketing. To answer the question, your entire value chain may have to change. Similarly, in the mid office, where our supply chains reside, there is this huge question now. On one side, there is localization of the supply chain to increase its reliability. And on the other side, there is this whole question of participating in the global supply chain, which means that the technology intervention in the supply chain will be of a different order. In the back office today, I think finance has started becoming a dramatic lead function. So today, when you look at the TCS announcement of 25 by 25, so by 2025, 75% of their workforce will be entirely working from home. That's actually a business change initiative, which has come as a consequence of financial modeling, because that cost structure won't change just through rentals. It will change through the pyramid structure, the ability to now go to tier 2, tier 3 cities at scale, etc., etc. So the entire price point completely now changes for the industry. And a lot of this will happen through simulation that happens in the back office. Additionally, there are significantly higher compliance requirements which back offices will have to serve in terms of people, tracking and much of the stuff that we're hearing about. So the second big issue is these behavior shifts are going to cause a dramatic transformation of the business model. And I think right now, many of us are so caught in the crisis, we are not spending the time necessary to reimagine what that change has got to be. The third, and I think maybe the most important aspect, is going to be people. And as we are seeing from other countries, which say China, for instance, which started coming back to work, there is a lot of change in the way people are approaching their life and their employment as employees, employers, so on and so forth. And therefore, getting back to work, just as one example, isn't as simple anymore as just opening your office and inviting everybody back in there. Today, we as employees will be faced with significant concerns. Are we safe? Are we secure as we head back? Employers will be faced with significant concerns. I was just, in fact, before this meeting, speaking to a client who's one of the largest manufacturers in India. And he was saying, even if we want to open everything, we can't, because we will open perhaps at 20% of capacity and stay with that for a while. Because if an employee in the shop floor gets infected, then having invested in the full restart, we'll have to shut shop again. And then we don't know when it will come back. And the cost of getting it wrong is extraordinarily high. So the whole employer-employee relationship is going to witness a dramatic change. And that's something I think we need to think about. So in short, just to summarize everything I said, this lives and livelihood crisis has generated human behavior shift at the scale we saw at the turn of the century. And as a consequence, we are going to have to fundamentally think, business leaders will have to think about how technology can directly solve business problems. We will have to rethink the business model, perhaps first principles up, grounds up, to accommodate behavior shifts within our customers, our networks, partners. And finally, our employees and employer relationship will have to be rethought at, again, very fundamental levels in order to be able to manage post this crisis. So that that's my quick take on where we need to go to navigate the new normal.
Thank you, Dr. Shri Chatterjee. Now, can I request Shri Abhishek Singh ji, CEO of MyGov and CEO of NeGD, Government of India, to kindly make his chief guest address.
Thank you, and Vidur, and thank you, Krishnan, Chatterjee, and Lovneesh for sharing your insights on the navigating the new normal. And I would say that they have very rightly pointed out what we are looking at. And I would just briefly add to the government flavor from the government side of view when we look at such things and such changes that we are coming in our lifetimes. And what I feel is that this pre-COVID and post-COVID world is going to be a milestone across the world, something like was before the World War and after the World War. The way the Second World War, way the things changed, and this is like impacting the world in larger ways than we had ever thought, and it's making change the way we look at doing business, doing work, living lives. This entire definition, the entire concepts are changing, and this will have ramifications in almost every walk of life as we go on. And the first and foremost, Mr. Chatterjee very rightly talked about lives and livelihoods. And when we do that, we have to ultimately realize that this virus and this disease is going to be with us for some time to come till a vaccine or something is discovered. But at the same time, when you look at the nature of this virus, it's also that the fatality rates are not too high. The number of people it affects is not too high. Number of people who get infected also, it's not that everybody shows symptoms. There are a lot of people who are asymptomatic, who are mild symptoms, and they can come out of this. So it's not that getting the virus is end of the road or something. One has to realize that it is a problem, but it's a problem that we need to face and we need to address if we have to ensure that we are saving lives as well as livelihoods. And to do that, how do we do that? The only thing that is going to work till we come with a potent vaccine will be behavioral change. So like, how do we adopt changes in the way we do? Like, for example, social distancing or wearing of a mask or hand washing or using sanitizers or maintaining basic hygiene. Somehow these are some things which in India we are not very used to. So this, but over the last 2 months or something, more and more people are talking about it, more and more people are following it. So this will become a way of life. This will be something that we will practice day in and day out. And herein also we realize that platforms like MyGov have a huge role to play in trying to drive behavioral change and trying to nudge people into adopting uh, practices which can be life-saving. And this has led to coming to a scenario where we are ensure we are using celebrities to push hand washing and now driving the message through various channels, through various mediums, through social media, with digital tools, with videos. All kinds of channels are being used to push that concept. The other thing that we are finding as we move ahead is that more and more companies are adopting to the future of work, which is a mix of work from home and work from office. So when we do that, we realize that there is a huge need of collaboration tools, of techniques, of how do we enable people to work from home, how do we identify, prioritize that who will be coming to the office, who will not be. So this is going to lead to transformational changes in the way we approach work. And when we do that, while the technical tools, the video conferencing tools, the meeting tools, and the collaborating tools are easy to develop, the impact that will have on other issues like urban planning, like housing, like office spaces, like traffic, like pollution, climate change, it will have huge impact on all these sectors. And it will already, we are seeing that pollution has gone down when people are staying home. Public transport, like how much people will use public transport, metros, travel, business level travel. So all this will be impacted in the days to come, just because people will start realizing that there's a lot of things that can be done remotely, that can be done from home. And the other dimension which I foresee will have an impact is that more and more people will be able to join the workforce, especially women. So very often we find that women leave jobs and not able to do a day job because they have other responsibilities at home, and that limits their participation in the workforce. So I see that this whole work from home concept will lead to a women empowerment also, involving more women in the workforce. And overall, if more and more people join the workforce, it will have an impact on whatever we do. So businesses will become more optimal, and the diverse section of employees will be available for all. The other dimension, when we look at the government point of view, is that how is it impacting education, health, agriculture. And there we see, like the last 2 months, we have seen a lot of public schools, private schools adopting e-learning techniques, and classes have gone online, assignments have become online. The kids are using Zoom and Teams and Google Meet and Cam Scanner and submitting assignments, conducting examinations. So So e-learning is going to be the order of the day. But when we do e-learning, there is a huge issue of digital divide. Like, are we like trying to create a society of haves and have-nots? How do we ensure that those people who do not have access to a device or access to connectivity, they also are not deprived of education? So toward this objective, the role that the government of India is playing with regard to promotion of the DTH channels, the Swayam Prabha channels. The 32 Swayam Prabha channels are already in place, which are imparting educational content to schools through the DTH platform. So that also, it has recently been announced that the finance minister is going to be expanded with 12 more channels, and there will be a need of a lot of regional content in the regional languages for all subjects, and to ensure that those who do not have access to a device get basic learning from the digital DTH kind of platforms. The other dimension is that when we look at health, already there has been a talk of telemedicine for a long time, but unfortunately the legal framework was not in place, because when we do telemedicine, it's connecting the citizens and the patients to health service providers and doctors on the other day through an interoperable switch. And today, especially when we have platforms like DigiLocker, Aadhaar, and UPI. Using a mix of these three, one can build an interoperable health switch, which will operate like the UPI, and it will enable connecting the patients or the citizens with the health service providers in a seamless manner. The identity of the citizen can be ascertained by the Aadhaar. The payments can be made through the UPI, and the whatever medical advice is given by the doctor, those registries can be certified by the National Health Authority or the Ayushman Bharat, and whatever advice they give, either through audio or either through video or through a chat or through a prescription, that can be digitized and stored in the DigiLocker, which will be secure. So it will ensure that the connects between various service providers, whether the public or private, their service provider, they will be able to offer services on the fly, and that will expand the reach of healthcare in our country. And the way we are visualizing it can be built as an open health systems network is that APIs can be provided to even insurance companies. So whether it's somebody is covered by Ayushman Bharat or somebody has a Medicare or some health insurance policy, they can also interface with that and provide the health insurance to people who are needing it. Similarly, in the field of agriculture, when we look at like the potential of a digital agriculture, where the suppose extension work is not possible because travel is restricted, and so today we have a situation wherein we have various databases in which all kinds of data is available. Like PM Kisan database is there of all the farmers, along with details of the land records. Land records have been digitized in almost all the states, and then we have the soil health data, which gives us at a very micro level the kind of soil which a farmer has in his field, and then the interspace with the GIS data and the weather data from the IMD. So using all these data and superimposing them on a GIS platform and knowing the identity of a plot of land and the farmer who is cultivating there and his mobile number, it will be possible to give customized advisories to the farmers with regard to when he should do cropping, when he should do sowing, when he should do plowing, what seeds he should use, what crop he should grow, what kind of fertilizers he should use, and what kind of pesticides he should use. And these advisories can be given in the local language to the farmer on the phone. So digital technologies in the days to come will help transform agriculture in a big manner, and that will help reduce the input costs for the farmers, and it will help increase his output also. But when we do all this, when we do go into a digital domain with regard to whether it's work or whether it's education, health, or agriculture or any other sector of the economy, or what we find is there are other challenges that will come in. Like cyber security will be a big challenge. How do we know? How do we ensure that proper privacy norms are ensured? How do we ensure that data is secure? How do we ensure that cyber crimes don't increase? How do we ensure that people don't start losing money when they are doing digital payments? So this would require building in secure systems as well as awareness of everyone with regard to the best practices for cyber security. So cyber security will be a big area of concern as and when we become more digital in the days to come. And the other issue which I mentioned, which we'll always think of resolving, will be the digital divide. How do we ensure that when we build apps and when we build tech solutions, we also cover those who do not have a smartphone, those who only have a feature phones, and even those who do not have any such device. So for them, the last mile connectivity will remain a challenge. So this is what we will need to focus on. and companies across the world will also need to think, and especially in India, will need to think what is it that they can do to address the new and emerging challenges which are coming in. So these are some of the thoughts that I wanted to share with regard to the new normal. And if there are any questions, then I would be happy to answer as you promised.
Excellent.
Thank you, sir, for the insights. Can I request Vidur Gupta ji to start the panel discussion, please? Vidur Gupta ji, partner, EY.
Sure. Thank you, Varun, and thank you, ASSOCHAM. Very warm welcome to everyone in this panel session, and thanks, Dr. Lovneesh, Krishnan, and Abhishek, sir, for sharing initial thoughts in terms of what is the new normal, and in fact, for helping me, because that was the first question I was planning to ask, that we've been hearing about new normal, but what is new normal? And if I talk from an end citizen perspective, I'm sure many of us on the call also realize that for us as citizens, a basic element of how do we do our grocery shopping, how do we consume entertainment, how do we do, of course, our professional work in terms of elements, or as basic as our kids going handling education, everything has changed. So in those contexts, we do realize what is the new normal which is coming to. But I just wanted to build, I think most of the key pillars of this new normal and this paradigm shift which is happening in the COVID crisis has been covered. Specifically, if I talk around supply chain, if I talk around employee health, that's been talked and highlighted. I just wanted to bring, from an EY perspective also, we thought of one or two key pieces which would also change, would be around customer health, in terms of customer health and brand protection for the enterprises, because now many of those responsibilities would also be on enterprise. The other thing would be in terms of the entire thought process around what is risk management, what is enterprise risk management. That's going to have a complete different connotation, definitely. And last element around resilience. While we always heard resilient plan, we always heard that fairly mature, be it from an organization's perspective, or even if we talk about within government, we have national disaster management and various means which is available, where we did, if I may use the word, script through that. And then the word I'm using is because as a professional, we also do push for that, saying that have we rehearsed, have we practiced, but what do you do when you are faced with a crisis which nobody has ever seen or has ever come across? So with that, let me use this opportunity to have a few questions to Mr. Krishnan and Abhishek, sir. And perhaps the way I wanted to do was that we'll use next few minutes to ask few questions, and then also take some inputs and questions from the audience. And I'll take help from Dr. Lovneesh if maybe some of our colleagues, some of our friends who are on this webinar can type their questions in the chat box, and we can definitely then ask to the respective panelists. So let me begin with Krishnan, with you. I know you did talk about supply chain or digital platform as one of the aspects. I just wanted to know, is it something you are saying only for MSME or some of those sectors, or are there underlying one or two things that will anyway change for all enterprises, be it large, be it small, but those one or two things are definitely gonna change forever for everyone?
So Vidur, you're specifically asking about the supply chain or other areas?
So supply chain as definitely as one of the example, but I also thought that if you have any other piece also which you believe will change for each of the industry segments or at a larger portion.
Yeah, sure. So let's start with supply chain. It's a good example because, quite frankly, the supply chain connects the entire enterprise, right? So order to cash, for instance, it goes right from the front office into the back office. I think one of the big the single biggest shift we are going to see is a supply chain is also a network. So on one side, it connects, you've got distributors, you've got dealers, and on the other side, you have manufacturers, you have vendors, and in the center, you have the firm or the company or the entity which is actually bringing goods to the market. Now, because of this, sort of all-encompassing nature of the supply chain, and the fact that it is a network, it sets up large numbers of transactions. And all of those transactions technically can be physical transactions. So you step into a store and you place an order and somebody deals with you, hands it over to you. Or you place an order as, on your factory for some inbound goods, and a trucker has to carry that, and you have to sign forms and you have to accept delivery. And, so there are both inefficiencies. So two things that, currently in the supply chain, we have to concern ourselves about. The number of transactions and interactions it creates definitely poses a risk to safety and, the kind of situation we don't want. And the inefficiency it poses creates cost as well as revenue pressures, because if your supply chain is inefficient in terms of taking goods in your inventory and reaching them where they are selling the fastest, then you will be left with inventory, your working capital cycle will extend. Or if your supply chain is poor in terms of just figuring out the speed at which the whole engine has to move, your revenues will be affected. So your supply chain can also drive revenue. Now, in all of this, if that supply chain is not rethought, because as I said, lives and livelihood, it's the same argument here as well. So if the safety aspects, if all those physical interactions do not become digital, which means you have to reframe, you have to rethink how the network is used. You may not have your own supply chain anymore as a company, but as a company, you may leverage a supply chain platform that seamlessly brings multiple. So like SAP's Ariba platform, just as an example. Ariba as a procurement platform drives $3.2 trillion of buying globally. And participating on that platform, which most of our customers do, means that they are able to seamlessly digitally interact with their entire supplier base. So there is a way you can make it non-physical. That's the lives part. And the livelihood part is obviously in the new normal, demand is going to be depressed. Now, you have to design the way your business will operate. And most business leaders today are clear that by the end of the year, nobody is going to come back to 100% capacity. So everybody is doing scenario planning to say, I'll be at 20 by July, I'll be in 30, and maybe best case people are saying by December we'll be back at 60, 65, something like that. Which basically means that what demand there is has to be serviced extremely well for you to be able to profitably run your business. And that's where the livelihood part comes in, of the supply chain's ability to intelligently and seamlessly work towards servicing demand in the best possible fashion and converting working capital into cash as soon as possible. So I think all of this, and none of these things I'm talking about are necessarily internal competitive advantages to the firm. So the fact that I can work with my logistics or transporters without any paper exchange is something everybody can do. So a lot of these functionalities can be disaggregated and platformed, and that those platforms could be used by multiple organizations in similar industries. And I think that platform approach is going to become of crucial importance. So while we may not Uberize our own transport because of safety concerns, we could certainly Uberize our supply chains so that they are more agile, they are more responsive to demand, as well as they take out physical transactions maximally.
Thanks for that perspective. And just on a lighter note, I know many of us would have seen that WhatsApp joke which said that what's the biggest reason of the transformation, and many people now select COVID as one of them. But while we understand it's an unfortunate situation we are in, but I do hear you that if there is an opportunity at this stage, because obviously, of course, we are in this together, and there is the only mechanism is to move forward. So if we can sort of leverage a common platform, or if we can look at optimizing that supply chain, definitely that's something which is going to be for betterment of the wider industries and enterprises. No, thanks. Abhishek sir, I wanted to ask you specifically something around MyGov portal. I must first of all compliment that thanks that platform is being fairly effectively used for communication with citizens. At least personally, I like the mechanism it's being used to break a lot of myths. A lot of unfortunately the fake information which comes in, and I do see MyGov regularly post that countering the fake news, but also something which is not visible to us citizens. Help us understand how is that portal or underlying that platform is also enabling government departments and other government functions to leverage digital platform for their own day-to-day activities.
See, like MyGov, as you know, is primarily a citizen engagement platform. What it does is that it serves as it enables a two-way communication between the citizens and the government. Like on one hand, citizens can give their suggestions, inputs about policy decisions, about anything that they feel the government should be doing. They can contribute to policy making through this platform. For which we do, like when the union budget was being prepared, we launched suggestions there. For Man Ki Baat presently, which will be telecast on 31st of January, we have launched a suggestions box. For COVID-19 also, for solutions, technology solutions, for other suggestions, we had a suggestion box. We still have a suggestion box running where we have almost 200,000 suggestions given by citizens. So it allows a forum wherein citizens can come and give their suggestions with regard to policy making and with regard to what the government should do. And on the other hand, the communication on the other side from the government to the citizens also MyGov enables. And what we do is that we try to go on the platforms where the citizen is. We have a portal and we have an app, but at the same time, we know that not every citizen will come to on our website, on our URL, or on our app. They might be there on other social media platforms, whether it's Instagram or whether it's Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or even YouTube, TikTok, Hello, a lot of platforms wherein citizens are engaging. So if we have to communicate something with regard to, say, hand washing, or with regard to what quarantine is, or what, because when the pandemic started, I don't think more than almost 90% of Indians did not know what quarantine meant. And social distancing was not known as the phrase as well as a concept. We are like Indians, we love to like be with each other in a shopping mall. In a shopping, people will be peeping over your shoulders just to put their things in this. So that is the way we are. That's the way our culture is. So when you want to bring in this do gaj duri and you want people to stay back, that's a behavioral change that needs to be driven, and that has to be done through various means. We got celebrities to talk about it. We got people to convince them to mask. Like most people would not use mask even when the pollution levels are very high. But at least now, when we go on the streets, we find almost everyone using a mask. So that requires a campaign which MyGov enabled. The other thing what we also do is that when we communicate with the citizens, we need to talk to them in a language that is like common. Very often, many people find deciphering government orders and deciphering various circulars that we issue quite tedious. And rightly so, because many government orders are issued to ensure that they cover all the legal points of view. So very often government orders say challenge the court of law. But ultimately, there is an essence of that order. So what we did was that we worked with Ministry of Home Affairs to ensure that their orders are broken down into simple English, trying to highlight the bullet points using very creative infographics, which my team does, and then communicate to people. So lockdown 2.0, lockdown 3.0, lockdown 4.0 became like quite widely shared infographics, which MyGov did. Then even with the airports, like when the flights are starting on Monday, Civil Aviation requested us if we can like communicate their guidelines into simple language. So our teams worked and they did that. They are already becoming, I see them almost on all TV channels, and a lot of people are forwarding them to me only from other groups, family groups and school groups. So it means that it's reaching the people. So what it does, what MyGov does, it demystifies the government. It tries to communicate to the citizens in a language that they prefer to talk to. We have in various languages, the content is available. And similarly, when you go to the Arogya Setu app, on that app also we have put several things on that in the media section. Like you go there, where there's a learning center, there's positive harmonies. So we try to address various aspects of it, how to make a mask, how to use a mask, then how to listen to something which is soothing to take care of mental health. Then celebrities also have talked about it. Amitabh Bachchan spoke about stigma, so that video is there. So our communications address a variety of things, and we work in close coordination with various ministries in order to help them communicate.
Okay, sure. So thanks for that, and I do agree. Yes, I think especially some of those when the guidelines around lockdown 2 and lockdown 3 were coming in, that was very explained in a very simplistic manner. And yes, I did happen to get the same message in multiple forums, and it was explained in a very easier manner. Coming back to you, Krishnan, and I know you did talk about that various enterprises are estimating that perhaps maybe by next 2 or 3 months, it's going to be 60% of workforce which might be back physically, or maybe it will take longer time, because all of us still do not know when the actual the usual what pre-COVID days we remember is going to be back. But do you think if right now we just talk of hypothetical day, that on an X day when these things are sorted, we are vaccinated and there is a mechanism, would we now have the same kind of office spaces, same kind of office environment, or in your sense, or you've been interacting with so many clients, do you believe that that's going to change permanently, that in terms of the remote working and in terms of curtailed offices is going to become a norm?
Yeah, I absolutely think it will change. So I think a lot of office-based working has been premised on existing human behavior. For instance, people who believe if you're not in office, you're not doing your job, right? So, or alternatively, people who think that to do a meeting, the other person has to physically turn up, otherwise. Now, those behavioral modes have now been questioned and potentially are changing, because at the end of the day, we don't know when a vaccine will be out. And it's only when a vaccine is out, and by best estimates, that's 2 years away probably. So till then, for anybody, you're taking a chance by going back. So let's say this new kind of behavior, this pattern, has to now run at least for the next 2 years. So those who demanded physical interactions will now no longer demand it. And once a habit has been there with you for a couple of years, it's highly unlikely that you will revert, because once you've gotten comfortable with remote engagements and so on, you probably will not revert. So I think the quantum of work from office, or work as we used to, which was a consequence of existing modes of behavior, that will change. And there would be some quantum. Let's just from a hypothetical point of view, say that pre-COVID, 20 to 25% of all work we did was premised on that. The behavior that the recipient of our work needs to physically engage with us. So that probably is going to go away. And the other part is even in the delivery of existing work. So today, when you're looking at, in delivery of existing work, because of labor intensity, we have historically not had great deals of automation. And I think now, willy-nilly again, because of the COVID crisis, that automation will have to come in. So with social distancing in a typical factory now, where 50 people could work, now you will probably fit in only 15 or 20. But if the factory has to operate at the same capacity, there has to be significantly higher automation, predictive maintenance, higher analytics, all that kind of stuff. Now, once you have made those investments to be able to automate work, so that intensity of people reduces in the workplace. You've made those investments, so they will continue. And let's say that the automation benefit in the work we do, again, hypothetically, is 15 to 20%. So arguably, if those hypotheses are correct, we are talking anywhere between 55 to 60% as the normal level at which we would resume. And this would obviously be very, very different industry by industry. You know, a TCS has clearly stated that it's 75%, and only 25 need to be in office. So they have jumped it down by 75. So I would tend to think TCS has given us one outlier, which is 75% of your work can go remote. And let's say at the other end, it could be something like 40%. So to that extent, you're really looking at a 25 to 60 of what we were coming back post-COVID is, I think, a fair estimate.
I agree, and I think again, on a lighter note, I think from an Indian context, we all would have to learn, because maybe culturally we are more social oriented. And I'm sure most of us on the panel as well as on the webinar would have seen that some of the other countries, maybe we could see that the work from home concept was fairly well adopted even in earlier years, and India was a little bit, maybe culturally behind that. But yeah, I agree that it's gonna be on a bigger manner. So maybe taking the same point, Abhishek sir, on from a government ecosystem, I want to ask on two perspectives. One, how the way we have been consuming citizen services. When many of us, if we need a certificate, be it a birth certificate or some of those things, we've been licensed or various things. And I'm sure license, of course, does need physical element, but there are various citizen services where we were used to of going to a government office. Is that also going to change? And second part of my question was also that are there going to be more remote working for the government?
Also, it's going to take a little time.
Because we do see so many government, there are so many workforce in government offices, which is of course needed to run the entire machinery. But do you believe that that might also change?
See, like most of the government did move in the working from home culture, and in the last 2 months, like very recently, instructions have been given that almost 50 government offices will function 50% of the staff strength, and before that it was 33%, and for quite a long time there was only deputy secretaries and above who were coming to the office. So many government departments were able to function very effectively by the use of VPN, by the use of e-office, by the use of email, by the use of other collaboration tools that we have. Meetings were held in video conferencing, major decisions were taken. And I can tell you from my example, my team at MyGov is like right now also it's working entirely from home. Because many of my team members live in very all parts of NCR. Some live in Ghaziabad, somebody is in Noida, somebody is in Greater Noida, somebody is in Faridabad, somebody is in Gurgaon, Rohini, all over. So since the public transport has not yet restored, they find it quite difficult to commute. And what we have found is that in the last 2 months, the productivity of the team has been significantly high. So the workload was very high, but the team was able to collaborate from multiple locations, and they were able to work till late, and the quality of output has been fairly good. So given that, I don't see any particular reason that we should change over and force everyone to come to the office. So what ultimately matters is whether the services are being delivered or not. Having said that, there will be certain departments which has got public dealing wherein people have to meet people for various kinds of things, and until those services are also digitized or made electronic, those offices will have to function in person and they will be there. But a lot of automation has already happened, especially with regard to certificates, the birth certificates, digital certificates you mentioned about. E-governance initiatives have been taken for a long time, like especially if you look at train tickets and banking operations now. That's taken for granted, that you don't, hardly anyone goes to a railway station to book a train ticket or to a bank for a normal banking transaction. So those things have already been digitized. There are a lot of digital innovations have been done in the income tax, wherein for filing returns or processing it, everything is electronic. The certificates in most states are electronic. Like even the e-pass, which was required during the lockdown period, almost all states had an electronic system of issuing. Somewhere the experience was good, somewhere it was not so good. But the thing is that it was there. So while a lot of public services are also digitized, already digitized, the e-governance readiness index, that report which was brought out the National E-Governance Conference, also ranks states on their level of digitization that has been done. So I see that in the days to come, that policy is already there, the trend will continue, and more public services will become electronic in the days to come.
I agree, and in fact, we did see that many of those services, many of those options were also available on as basic as WhatsApp as well, which is more relatable to a citizen kind of a thing. For the audience on the webinar, I'll just encourage that if you have any questions, please do share in the chat box. Perhaps I'll take one more question with Krishnan sir and Abhishek sir, and then perhaps we will look forward to questions from audience. So, moving to you, Krishnan, one of the important elements when we talk of this digital and remote working is also around cybersecurity. And my own that's personal area of passion. So I do want to talk about that. What do you see that in terms of changing? What amount of energy, what amount of effort that organizations would put in place, specifically because in the context I'm talking about, that many of the industries had client sensitive information. So if hypothetically my organization is interesting me to work from home, they're going to expect certain kind of controls to be done because I'm not directly in their physical environment. So what kind of changes do you believe that would also have for enterprises, physical security implications?
So, Vidur, my answer to this will be quite a simple one. Actually, obviously, technically, there are many things you can do. You can set up VPNs, you can virtualize desktops. There's an issue of net. All of that is there. But I fundamentally think now organizations will have to think of digital real estate with the same value that they gave actual real estate. And when development is done on open source packages and people try to save a lot of money on the platforms they build, these are the invisible losses that they meet with. Security gets compromised and so on and so forth. So I think given the switch, one of the expectations I see, I think that will happen is nobody in business, everybody understands that if you are investing in CP, it's going to cost you a bomb. And you go set up a store in CP, and you don't go set that same store up in Lajpat Nagar as an example, because you understand the importance of location and the value of real estate. The same thing is now got to start happening where tech is concerned. So I think if the right investments are made, if the right kind of R&D is behind the tech that is established, they will, the security aspects will be taken care of. If not, you're absolutely right. There are significant risks.
I like the term you used, digital real estate or digital estate kind of a thing. Absolutely right. So Abhishek sir, similarly, I think from a government ecosystem now, I think while all of us are awaiting the formal privacy regulation to come in, and in last few days we did see a lot of debate around either the tracing application, Arogya Setu, or in general, that because government is collecting so much of data, and of course most of us as informed citizens do realize that the data is important. If we want to fight the COVID, there's going to be huge amount of analytics which is going to be run in terms of hotspots, in terms of the places where maybe the medical equipments are not there or there. So this exercise, while to be on ground being fought in hospitals at medical places, but also has to be done with a lot of data. But what is the government's thought process, and as well as safeguards to give a comfort to the citizens that yes, the data, while the data is important, but there are adequate mechanisms being taken care for the security as well as privacy.
Thank you. In fact, as we speak, this is something that is being done, and that's been done greatly with very, very interesting results and very positive kind of inputs that we are getting from our data analytics team. Just from the Arogya Setu app, as you are aware, more than 11 crore people in India are using it. And you guys are aware of the functionality of the Arogya Setu. And all that I will say is that so far, more than 4.5 lakh positive contacts from the contacts of COVID-19 positive people have been identified. And what the app does is that those who have been come in contact with somebody who has been found COVID-19 positive, they are given the alert that they should exercise caution. And depending on the level of contact, they might be advised testing or further quarantine or other measures after a follow-up with the call center with the doctors out there. So out of these positive contacts, what we have observed is that when we do testing, then the number of people, percentage of people who are turning positive, COVID-19 positive from the Bluetooth contacts of COVID-19 positive, the positive rate is almost 24 to 25%, which is significantly higher than the overall positive percentage in the general population. In India, out of the 2.7 million tests that we have done, the number of positives around 1,18,000. So that is roughly 4%. 4% positive when we do general testing. But when we are doing testing of the Bluetooth contacts, we are getting a positive percentage of 24 to 25%. So this shows that we are really able to target our testing to the sections of people who are more vulnerable. And this will optimize the load on the health infrastructure with regard to the doctors, with regard to the paramedical workers, the first frontline health workers, and the testing labs and the equipment that we have. So that's a great output that we are getting from that. Over and above what the Arogya Setu data analytics team is also doing, with the great work from professors at IIT Madras and ISC Bangalore, is that it is helping identify potential hotspots. Like based on number of people who are coming in contact with COVID-19 positive, it computes to which is the area at the sub-pin code level, which has a likelihood of developing cases in the next 10 to 12 days. So once this information is available from the dashboard, this information is shared with the local health authority and the administrative authority, and then they take measures of containment and more restrictions in advance, so that if there is a possibility of a place becoming a hotspot, then if measures are taken 10 days in advance, then the possibility of number of people who are getting infected because of that information becomes lesser. So it's a huge kind of benefit that we are getting based on data analytics. So data is playing a big role, and that is helping us optimize the strategy of the COVID-19 campaign. And all state governments, all district administrations are actively using this data in order to ensure that we are able to help manage this crisis in the most optimal manner. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks. So, I'm fairly confident that that data is also being churned and kept in a secure manner, because we do in fact follow a lot of information which is coming on MyGov portal, that there are adequate safety measures being taken to handle that data which is coming.
101%. We are required by law to do it. Under the Disaster Management Act, the Data Access and Knowledge Sharing Protocol has been issued. So any authority with whom, and the data is only shared with the health authorities, any authority with whom data is shared are fully liable for the custody, for the security of that data, and ensuring that that data is only used for medical interventions and for no other purpose.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much. So let me take help from Dr. Lovneesh and Varun. If we have maybe one or two questions from audience, if you want to take, or maybe Dr. Lovneesh, if you have any questions from our panelists.
No, there are many questions that have come. I see around 30 or so questions. So some are fairly interesting. I'm exercising my judgment in picking and choosing the interesting ones. So this is for you, Mr. Abhishek, a very interesting question. that has been asked by Harminder Singh. It says that do you think COVID-19 experience will usher the world where business will have shorted supply chains and globalization will give in to protectionism and nationalism? Do you,
Come
the
again,
question,
come
the
again
question
with the question, please.
The question is, will COVID-19 reverse the flow of globalization to protectionism and nationalism per se, wherein countries will focus more on creating their own local infra and supply chains?
I don't think that should be a cause of worry. See, when we say Atmanirbhar Bharat, if the question relating to that, and it was very clearly mentioned by the Prime Minister, it means self-reliance, and self-reliance does not mean isolation or does not mean protectionism. It means that it means leverage your strengths and ensure that you are able to nurture companies and nurture products which help us become self-reliant, and that would require in limited form being part of the global economy, because the stage at which we are, the way the global economy is integrated, to think that we will be back to protectionism and nationalism, I think that's a concern which is not really valid. It will require looking at your own core strengths and focusing on them in order to become self-reliant in the true sense. That is what will be required. That will require tapping into various inherent strengths that we have. And I'll just give you one small example. Like, for example, when the remote working started, we all started using video conferencing tools. And one very popular video conferencing solution that we all of us were using was Zoom. And in no time, there were some concerns raised about security, about privacy, and other issues. And the Ministry of Home Affairs said that it cannot be used for official purposes. So we thought that what is it that is required to be done in order to build our own VC solution? We realized the technology is not rocket science. We have been like planning to launch literally the Chandrayaan and other initiatives are on. So there's no reason we cannot build a VC solution. So we thought, let's launch a innovation challenge for building a video conferencing solution the government can use. And we launched it in 2 phases: ideation phase, prototype, and then building the final solution. But at the initial stage also, we were surprised to get more than 2,000 entries. And then it became difficult to find out which are the best. So to select 10 for development of prototype also, it was too difficult because there are lot many companies, Indian companies, which already had the products. So sometimes we do not look at the strengths that we have and trying to go in for easy way forward. So self-reliance in today's context means looking at your own core strengths, focusing on them, nurturing startups, building businesses, and building companies that can build world-class products, not only for India, but for the world. Yeah.
Interesting. Great answer. Krishnan, question to you on your lives and livelihood aspect that you mentioned. And I'm just twisting the question slightly. The question is, how do you see cross-industry collaboration addressing the lives and livelihood aspect? If you feel that the cross-industry collaboration can actually help in addressing that, then which sectors do you feel will lead this drive, and particularly how important do you see healthcare going forward? This is for you, Krishnan. So we lost Krishnan.
I think we got this.
There is another question for you, Mr. Abhishek, and very interesting. This crisis, Mr. Abhishek, there is a question. So there is this crisis. Do you see the possibility of toning down of privacy laws globally?
Don't think so, because the civil society and the privacy champions are ever vigilant, and there is no question that anyone can think of toning down of privacy laws, but yes, we have to think of what do we mean by privacy. When we say privacy, it should mean privacy in what context? Like there is nothing called absolute privacy. When we go to a doctor, the doctor will ask you questions, and we have to disclose what the ailment is in order to get the right diagnosis or to get the right medicine. So similarly, privacy and information. Some information is required to be shared for getting a particular service and ensuring that you are getting the best kind of service. When you book a train, when you apply for a visa, you will give your passport number, you will give your date of birth. So the notion of privacy is not absolute. The privacy means that giving the information in true trust with the authority which is vested to deliver a service, and that information which is being sought is required for that service only. So ideally, the Puttaswamy judgment with regard to privacy, which says that any data which is collected should be proportionate, the principle of proportionality. The principle of proportionality should be valid with regard to whatever information is being collected for anyone should be proportional to the need for delivery of a service for that purpose, and then there should be legal backing to it, so that if there is violation of that proportionality concept, there should be a redressal mechanism that you should go somewhere and try to get relief for that. So once these two things are met, that is what privacy means. So some privacy activists would feel that that they want to be totally, so there are people who love to live on an island. You don't interact with anyone, you don't need to tell your name also to anyone. So that's a total privacy concept that people can do. But that's not a choice. That's not the way society is structured. That's not the way people live their lives. For various needs, when you do a job, when you interact with people, when you take a service, you will be required to share some of it for ensuring that the quality of the service is not hampered. That is what the privacy in the emerging scenarios will mean.
Yeah, so this was asked by Jagjit Singh. I hope he got the answer. Thank you, Mr. Abhishek. Krishnan, while you were away, there was a question that I was asking. Somebody has asked do you see a role for cross-industry collaboration to address the lives and livelihood aspect that you mentioned? If yes, which sectors do you think will be important?
So I think it will happen, but it's a bit premature to figure out which sectors are going to do it. But there are definitely horizontal areas. Going back, Lovneesh, to the supply chain construct we discussed when Vidur asked the question. All horizontal processes, so it could be supply chain, it could be, for example, people management or the whole HR, the recruitment process, things like certification. Uh, uh, a good example would be R&D in pharmaceuticals. So I think given also the attention that sector is being paid through the COVID crisis and this whole discovery of uh, the medication, the treatment necessary to deal with it. So a lot of areas in pharma, for example, the R&D space, preclinical, these are non-compete. So there is a lot of data that gets generated, which can be platformed and shared equally. So I think there are multiple areas where digital platforms could be used. Similarly, collections, for instance. Similarly, customer acquisition. A lot of banks today, the way they deal with bureaus. So bureaus have customer information. They look at it from a credit rating perspective as well as from a targeting perspective. So in whichever functional areas, Lovneesh, data intensity is very large, and there is a great deal of value in putting data together to process it across industries. We will see platform solutions come up.
Great. And a very interesting question, maybe Vidur, that you would like to take a shot at this. I am not sure who among all four of us is fit to that. The question is, what's the opinion about people who want to work from home in a manufacturing unit? So, open.
I can take that.
You can take that. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
So think of the nature of automation in a manufacturing unit, Lovneesh. So you have machines. if machines use predictive analytics and quality in terms of interventions and maintenance, if machines are used driving robotics of some form or the other, all those are operations which analytics will have to be run, operational services will have to be run through systems. Just like, so imagine if it's a robotic factory process, it's exactly the same as remote maintenance of infrastructure that Indian IT does so well. So a lot of the shop floor work, if the way as automation increases, a lot of it can be delivered remotely as opposed to standing on the shop floor and turning wrenches and spanners. Therefore, if somebody is looking at working from home in a manufacturing setup, start looking at IoT scenarios, learn IoT, get into advanced analytics and all those kind of areas, and those opportunities are definitely going to open up.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
I'll just add on to it.
Point, yeah, please.
I just wanted to add on to what Krishnan said. I'm assuming the question, when it was this asked, maybe was specifically more from a shop floor perspective, because definitely if manufacturing as an industry, you would look, it's fairly wide, because again, at that, any enterprise or any industry, that would have multiple business processes, and there are many of the processes which are not directly engaged on the shop floor, and enabling that. Those definitely can be done remote from home, and even in today's day might be happening. But yes, as Krishnan said, that even some of those can be looked at, how the automation can bring in and reduce the physical amount which is needed on the floor.
Okay, great. And a final, I think we are running out of time now. A final question to you, Mr. Abhishek, before we let you go. The question is very interesting, that post-COVID, do you think we quickly changing from a labor-intensive economy to a digital-intensive economy? And how do you see the impact on our young manpower that we have? While the question is very generic, maybe you are the best to answer this, Mr. Abhishek.
So I think part of it I already mentioned when I mentioned about the future of work and how things will change. So definitely there will be a push for the digital, but there will be some things for which labor will be required. So while manual labor cannot be done away with, it will be there, but the level of interactions, the level of physical interactions, that will reduce. So like, for example, there is more digital payments, like there will be more automatic attendance marking. So the number of people, number of touch points wherein people come in physical contact with each other will reduce. We may have more e-commerce deliveries. So there will be delivery boys. So that cannot happen. I do not foresee that we'll have robots delivering food, or robots delivering groceries, or big basket having automated machines delivering things. Those days are still quite distant as far as India is concerned. So there will be people will be there. The role will be changed. Different kinds of skill sets will be required. So that would require reorientation of the way we look at businesses, the way we look at supply chains, the way we operate our different activities. And part of it will be digital management of inventory. So those things which can be automated will get automated. But wherever labor is required, labor will remain in India, because that's much more cheaper, much more economic, and much more useful for many of the purposes in which they are employed. But their interface will become digital to a great extent.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the elaborate answer. I think, Varun, we have totally run out of time, and
I think we need to sign off.
Yeah, 1.5 hours is slightly a longer time for a webinar. 1 hour is good enough.
I have another meeting to go to, and I have some documents to work on. So I would like to sign off now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abhishek. And Varun, we hand it over to you for the final closing comments.
Thank you, sir. And I, on behalf of ASSOCHAM, thank all the panelists and the audience who have joined us. And looking forward to welcome you in the next part of the webinar series. Thank you all.
Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.